And we're live. E. Michael Jones and I. Today, we're going to discuss Whig history, which may be an unfamiliar idea for many people. And it was only recently that I discovered that Catholics have a quite different idea of Whig history. As I understand it, Whig history is the sacred liberal belief that the Protestant Reformation began to open the gates of liberty that the West is now enjoying. I didn't know that Catholics disagreed. Or I suppose if I thought about it, Catholics would disagree, but I wasn't thinking about it clearly until it suddenly dawned on me. Have I got this more or less correct, Mike?
Yeah, but we're talking about an interpretation of English history primarily, which emphasizes freedom and the Enlightenment values, enlightenment over the dark. It's the flip side of the Black legend, where the Catholic Church is the font of all obscurantism, wants to keep people enslaved in darkness. In that sense, it's kind of Masonic. It's about an interpretation of history that became normative in England, but also affected America. You have a person like Francis Parkman, who wrote the Jesuits in North America. This is a man who admired the Jesuits, but admired their ability to go off into the wilderness with the Indians on the moose hunt. I read it. It's just an incredible book. I think all young Americans should read this book because it's just a great piece of literature. But anyway,
could you please tell me the title and the author again? I'm afraid I didn't catch it.
The Jesuits in North America by Francis Parkman.
How do you spell his surname? Parkman.
P-A-R-K-M-A-N.
Okay.
It's a really good book. So, but anyway, he goes through all the absolute heroism of the Jesuits, which is itself extraordinary because the Jesuits are the villain in Whig history. If there's ever a villain in Whig history, it's the Jesuits. But he has to admire the fact that they would simply go off into the wilderness of the Gaspé Peninsula with the Abnaki Indians on the moose hunt because that's the only way they could learn Abnaki. This is heroic.
Abnaki is a language. Sorry.
Yeah, it was right. one of the ethnic languages. The tribe was known as the Abnaki. So you have to wait until the snow is waist deep. The Indians are on snowshoes and they kill a moose, and then they set up camp right there, build their teepees, and eat the entire moose after cooking it inside their teepee. And the image sticks with me as there's a Jesuit there with his mouth is at the tent flap. So it's 20 below zero outside the tent, and it's about 100 degrees inside the tent and the teepee. And the teepee is filled with smoke, and he's trying to breathe some fresh air, and just heroic figures. But he has to end it by saying, but it's good that the Jesuits were defeated because that paved the way for liberty. And America and blah, blah, blah. So he had to, it didn't fit. He's an American, obviously influenced by Whig history, obviously feels that somehow this pattern, this template can be imposed on everything, including the Abnaki Indians. But it just doesn't work. So this is what we're talking about here. So you have, like the classic example would be the Macaulay's History of England, where he talks about the Glorious Revolution. Did you cover this in school when you were in school?
Well, I know that the Glorious Revolution was about the Protestant succession being secured when William and Mary arrived in England in a peaceful revolution.
Peaceful according to whom?
The Protestants, I suppose.
But I mean, what they're leaving out is the fact that there were Jacobite uprisings for every 20 years or so after the Glorious Revolution, that they simply, well, we're not going to talk about that. The Jacobite Rising of 1745 was the Stuarts. Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was a Stuart, went to the lairds in Scotland, got them to be on his side because this is the Catholic monarch. He's coming back. I am the rightful heir to the throne. And they got within, I think they got within 100 miles of London, and almost took the country back. So that's what we're talking about here. You're basically trying to come up with a plausible explanation of why a usurper is the legitimate heir, the legitimate king. Well, that's a serious task you've given yourself. Why?
Well, I'm only saying that the monarchs would find themselves eventually at odds with the Pope, and the Pope, not being in control of any armed forces, would find himself at a disadvantage in making the kings of Europe do what he wanted. And as I keep saying, the Reformation was inevitable, and that's a reason, really, that the Pope was not armed and therefore had to rely on powerful Catholic kingdoms who wanted to remain Catholic.
Right.
But since
Philip II, for example, of Spain, King of Spain, who was married to Mary, and then she was
Bloody Mary. Just to clarify for people who may not be so familiar.
Bloody Mary is a Whig concept, isn't it?
Yes, but I suppose people will think Bloody Mary was the elder sister of Queen Elizabeth I. Just to put it all in context, I really don't think anybody understands any history or knows it. So I
well, tell me what did you study in school? Did you do this in what is high school?
Yes, at secondary school.
Your O levels, did you do?
Yes,
did you have to write essays on this type of thing?
Well, I could have done Tudor history, but I chose to do modern European history.
Well, suppose you had written an essay on Tudor history where you said that the Reformation was a looting operation.
Well, they think I was Catholic, wouldn't they?
Would they ask you to rewrite your essay? Did that didn't even occur to you to say that at that time, right?
Well, I know this is what Catholics say about the Anglican Church. I think I first heard it from Michael Voris.
Yeah, well, he got it from me, I'm sure. But you say, well, Catholics say it. Well, is it true or not? Was it a looting operation or was it not? Don't just say that Catholics say that.
I'm trying to think of it, think it through legalistically. I suppose all the monasteries were located in Henry's kingdom, and therefore, really, they belonged to him as absolute monarch of England, and he was only, allowing the Pope to boss him around for a bit until he could take it no longer. And also before Henry got annoyed at not being allowed to have his annulment, there was Henry II, the one who said, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" and indirectly which indirectly led to the death of Thomas Becket. And his son, King John.
There's always been tension between the Pope and the Emperor, or the Pope and the King. There's always been tension, and it's a good thing, because what you don't want is something like Orthodoxy, or actually England, where the King is the Pope. That didn't turn out well. England didn't turn out well in terms of religion. It's about ready to disappear, I hear.
Well, yes. Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned this idea about the British monarch being also the supreme governor of the Church of England, so that there would be this separation of powers issue, because the whole idea of the Archbishop of Canterbury was that he was meant to be the conscience of the king. I think this was it was put this way in one of the history plays of Shakespeare. It was probably Henry II, and what was I going to say? It's gone out of my mind. Yes, so basically, all the kings of Europe were, eventually converted into Catholicism, because the Catholic missionaries would come to them and say, "Hey, we know you've got your kind of, cheapo Celtic Christianity, but it ain't as cool as the Roman Catholicism from the Eternal City of Rome, and we suggest you
No,
well
there
bow
was
down to us."
there was no Christianity in Europe before Catholicism. That didn't exist. They
Well,
went from
wasn't there some argument about when Easter began, and the Irish had some kind of Celtic Christianity, but eventually
not
they.
before not St. Patrick brought Catholicism to Ireland. Before that, it was pagan Druids who engaged in all kinds of reprehensible practices, which is probably why the religion collapsed so effectively. This is something that the neo-pagans don't seem to want to know. There's an interesting film out called Midsummer, which just appeared, and that was based on the Wicker Man. The Wicker Man. Have you seen the Wicker Man?
Yes, I know some people were very who like it very much. It's about human sacrifice.
Right. So yeah, it's a very good film. I thought it was a very good film, much better than Midsummer. But Midsummer is a remake of Wicker Man. But basically, it begins with the policeman showing up on these islands off of the coast of Scotland, and something's wrong, and someone has disappeared, and he's trying to get to the bottom of it. And what he realizes is that there's this big orgy going on, this big sexual orgy going on the island. And it's related to what he's doing, because the natural consequence of returning back to paganism is human sacrifice. And that's what's going on. He ends up being sacrificed. But the lure to get you into that is sex. So, you can do whatever you want sexually now, and then we'll hold the other part, which is human sacrifice, which may be, by the way, the hidden grammar of the Epstein files.
But talking about human sacrifice, wasn't the sacrifice of Jesus another form of human sacrifice?
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The final
But
form, the ultimate form. Yes, you're right. And the one thing that made any subsequent human sacrifice unnecessary, but certainly repugnant and illegal. The Hebrews did not engage in human sacrifice while they were following Yahweh. Whenever they deviated from Yahweh, they would end up offering up their children to Moloch. So sacrifice is part of the human condition, and it leads when paganism gets decadent, which it always does. It leads to human sacrifice. It's a sign that your culture has gone completely decadent, and that's when Christianity comes in and basically tears down your temples, as the Catholics did in Mexico.
Right. I mean, I thought the story of Abraham and Isaac was God saying, "No more human sacrifice. I know you like that sort of thing, but don't do it anymore. Not in my name." And Abraham was Abraham was praised for saying, well, thank you for being so obedient and being prepared to sacrifice your son on my behalf. But I was only kidding. I was only testing you. I didn't mean it. And from now on, nobody is to sacrifice their son.
Right.
Including myself, I guess. I mean, God.
Yes. So it is in some sense human sacrifice, but in some sense it is not. But anyway, yeah, you're right. You're right. But so paganism leads to unintended consequences. And I think that's what the Irish are feeling right now. after they made their turn toward paganism. Certainly some of them have made a turn toward paganism, largely because, as far as I can tell, because of sexual compulsions or sexual desires.
Well, yes, and the people who want to exploit these people would be dangling sex before them like a carrot before a donkey,
Right.
and they all fall for it.
That's right. Isn't that what the Epstein story is about? That the Jews have taken this as a form of control. I wrote a book called Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control. So it seems to have a special relevance right now.
I mean, that was when I first heard of you. Actually, somebody was quoting that book, and I do remember how impressed.
So what is the Epstein files? It's a combination of libido dominandi and the Jewish revolutionary spirit. That's what it is. That's what can explicate what's going on right now.
Well, it's just the CIA collecting compromat. And I suppose we can blame the CIA on Americans, can't we?
No, but it's not the CIA, it's the Mossad.
It's the same thing.
No, it isn't. But it's the Mossad Epstein was working for the Mossad, as far as I can tell.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. The Iranians say Great Satan and Little Satan, meaning Uncle Sam.
Right.
And Israel.
Right. Did you there's the latest video that just came out. Here's Steve Bannon in interviewing Jeffrey Epstein, and he brings up Paradise Lost. It's amazing. An amazing vindication of what I've been saying about Satanism as the hidden grammar of America.
So what did Steve Bannon say?
So Steve Bannon starts off by asking Jeffrey Epstein, "Are you the devil?" And then Epstein, is being the modest guy that he is, he says, "No, I'm just a kind of lower level." And then they find it. He then brings up Paradise Lost, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. And Jeffrey Epstein says, "Yeah, I think I heard that. I saw that in a movie somewhere."
Perhaps he was listening to one of your lectures.
The same thing, like Donald Trump said the same thing. He's being interviewed by the New York Times, and they say, "Do you follow international law?" And he says, "No." And so the New York Times says, "Well, what do you follow?" And he says, "My morality, my mind, my mind." Where did he get that idea? He got that from Satan's speech. Nothing matters. No, what to say? The mind is its own place. You don't have to follow anybody else. This is the demonic hidden grammar of the American empire, and the proof of it is that you don't have to read Paradise Lost to know this. To be pick it up by breathing over here.
Well, I think that New York Times journalist, could have followed it up by, what do you think is morality, Mr. President? And, and then it could have been a more interesting conversation. But perhaps it's not too late to ask Trump all these questions if he's prepared to.
I don't think he can answer the questions. He gave the answer to the best of his ability. He's not a deep, reflective man. He's not a cultured man. Doesn't read books. He writes books. He doesn't read them, or maybe someone else writes them for him. But I'm saying this is more evidence that this is a general feeling over here, that we admire Satan because Satan he's a rebel. He rebelled against God, and we rebelled against the British Empire, and so therefore, we're all kind of Whiggish in our orientation here, and we call revolutions we like glorious, even though they're not.
Well, I suppose that the English must have meant that the Protestant Reformation were the kings liberating themselves from the Pope, and then after that, it just got better and better. I mean, that's how they think of it anyway.
For
the empire,
for the Whigs,
just now the Anglo-American Empire, of which you and I are both part of.
Cobbett is the guy who understood what was going on.
Oh, the free trade guy.
No, I don't believe it was free
Or perhaps
trade.
I'm confusing him with Cobden.
No, you're thinking of Cobden. This is William Cobbett, who was a great thinker who wrote a book on the Reformation, which got it right. Absolutely right. I mean, basically, my thesis that it was a looting operation comes largely from Cobbett's book. And he had nothing but bad things to say about the Whigs. He said the creation of the Bank of England was a disaster for England. It was created by the Whig oligarchs, and because it created a nation of tax eaters and taxpayers. The Whigs became the tax eaters because they were the ones that set up the bank and they collected the interest, and the rest of England paid interest and got into unrepayable debt. So Cobbett was a genius in understanding the dishonesty, the mendacity behind Whig history.
Well, I suppose the ultimate proponent of Whig history must have been Francis Fukuyama, who wrote The End of History, which is a kind of eschatology of Whig history. Like, so he was saying, in time, everybody will be liberal and we will reach the end of history because everybody will be happy and we will have heaven on earth.
That's right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the other guy would be Thomas Friedman, who wrote the book called The Lexus and the Olive Tree. More influenced by Kant, I think. Kant's book, Zum ewigen Frieden, on perpetual peace, in which he said commerce will bring about peace. Well, it didn't, did it? You had the era of globalism in the United States of America. Well, let's say beginning in 1991, Friedman's book came out in 1999. Beginning in 1991 with the defeat of communism and the collapse of the Soviet Union, has led to nothing but one war after another. So it doesn't work that way.
Well, it's the imperial wars of Uncle Sam to establish that, he's the one in charge. And it began with the Korean War and the Vietnam War and the telling off of the French and the British to leave the Egyptians alone during the Suez Crisis. That was these were progressive assertions of American power, wasn't it?
Began with King Philip's War, where the Puritans decide to exterminate the natives. That's the beginning of it. You can't understand this without understanding the Puritan attachment to Paradise Lost and to Satan, and the fundamental Protestant statement, which is non serviam. That's the statement which the devil makes, I will not serve. And that's the statement that the Protestants make as well. That's the fundamental hidden grammar of Protestantism, and it's satanic.
But Mike, surely the Protestants won the wars of the Reformation, didn't they? Because, I suppose the Catholics could have, done really well for themselves in South America, but they didn't for some reason. And with the Monroe Doctrine, they were all removed.
The Counter-Reformation pretty much took back all of what the Protestants gained, but not all of it. And so it did continue largely because of America. I think America became the vehicle for Protestantism, political Protestantism, which was Americanism, which was Satanism. This is what we believe.
The Protestants were ethic. Perhaps that was
yes. There was a paradox in America, which I've talked about before, which is that embodied by Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Please tell us about him, because I'm sure the chat would need that.
He was
explanation of who he was and what he represented.
So he's part of the American Renaissance, thinker from Boston at the time, conquered actually around the early mid 19th century. So he starts off life as a Unitarian, but finds that too constrictive, and then he writes an essay called Self-Reliance, which is an incredibly important essay for American identity. And in that essay, he says, Nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind. Well, what do you hear in that? I hear Satan. The mind is its own place. That's what Satan said. He knew everybody at that time had read Paradise Lost. All of the people who were the signers of the Declaration of Independence had read Paradise Lost. And if they hadn't read it directly, they read it through Tom Paine's pamphlet Common Sense, which basically won the day for the people who wanted to break with England. So
but what did Emerson mean by that? It sounds quite innocuous to me about, it sounds like a healthy mind.
That's because you're a Satanist, Claire. That's because you resonate with Satanism because you speak English. Nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind.
Well, it just means that that I'm reasonably happy and not lying to myself. I mean, that's what it could mean, that we're not neurotic because of the terrible truths that we're denying. Perhaps it wasn't that what he meant.
Yeah, it's Claire. You're saying this because you speak English. Because you were raised in an atmosphere where Satanism was praised. You don't understand the implications of what you're saying here. But let me take this one step further, okay? So he says, nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind. And then someone says, it's in the self-reliance. But what if that's from below? And Emerson says, well, if that's from the devil, then I am of the devil's party. Well, that sounds pretty satanic, doesn't it? He said it. Yes, I am of the devil's party. Now, let me take this a step further. He goes over to England and he goes to Carlyle's farm up in Scotland, and Dickens is there. And they're talking about the collapse of sexual morality in London and Paris. And they're claiming that it's universal. And at this point, Emerson says, if you don't understand that every American goes to his marriage bed as a virgin, you don't understand America. And that was a paradox. America did have this kind of sexual morality that had outlasted the sexual morality in England, certainly in France, but in England as well. Even in spite of, at this point, when Emerson's talking, you're just at the beginning of Methodism, which did have a reforming effect on sexual morality in England. But it had a more important effect on the sexual morality. That was intact largely during the 19th century. Perry Miller, the great scholar of Puritanism.
Before you continue, I think that maybe we should explain what Methodism is, in that it was John Wesley looking after the proletariat,
right,
in the cities.
It was moral reform, and that had a lot to do with drinking, but also sex and drinking. And it coincided with what we call the Victorian era, which was an era in which sexual morality made a return, a rebound. And it lasted pretty much the entire course of the 19th century, up until the 20th century. So a classic figure would be like Leslie Stephen, who was the father of Virginia Woolf. Okay, Leslie Stephen was a victim of his age. He was totally influenced by Darwin, lost his faith in Christianity, but he said, I'm no longer Christian, but I will always be a gentleman. Like a classic English thing to say. And Nietzsche thought this was ridiculous and attacked the English, but specifically George Eliot, for this attitude. Like, you don't believe in God, but you do believe in morality. And it didn't last long, because the next generation, as I said, was Virginia Woolf, and Virginia Woolf was Bloomsbury. And Bloomsbury, the hidden grammar of Bloomsbury, according to Lytton Strachey, was the higher sodomy. So it collapsed within a generation. That's what we're talking about here. But it did exist. And I'm saying this paradox was even stronger in America, and it was destroyed by the wars of the 20th century and things like the Kinsey Report. So I'm writing my autobiography now. It's called Born Under a Bad Sign. And the bad sign I was born under was the Kinsey Report came out when I was in utero, when I was in my mother's womb. I was born 4 months after the Kinsey report came out, and that was the bad star under which my generation was born, because it led to the sexual corruption of the American people.
But we're all a creature of our times, and perhaps the reason for the corruption is the extinction of Christendom in 1918, and all coupled with the fact that you guys haven't got a proper religion. You haven't got a state church. You haven't got a proper religion, and because you don't know your own strength, or perhaps you do, you spread your policies of Sodom and Gomorrah globally.
So what do you mean you, Claire? What do you mean we, paleface? Who are you talking to?
Americans, Jews and Gentile. I'm not going to make the distinction.
I hate to break this to you, but there is no such thing as a generic American. It's been a civil war for our entire life, specifically based on ethnic identity, which is Protestant, Catholic, Jew. These groups are always fighting each other, have been ever since Catholics and Jews became prominent in the 20s, certainly before that, but certainly by that time.
And now you have the possibility of solving it all with Sharia.
What's this possibility? Did I miss something here?
Well, I mean, you're saying, Catholic, Protestant, Jew, and we can move out of this paradigm and into Sharia, where then you'll all be able to retain your identities and live peacefully together. and you have been promoting this idea of a Catholic-Muslim alliance.
Right, you're absolutely right. I'm Mr. Catholic-Muslim alliance. I agree with you. But there is no way in hell that Sharia law will ever be implemented in the United States of America. It's never going to happen.
Well, how about this narrative, Mike? And okay, my narrative is to say that the founding fathers were proto-Muslim because they were heretical Christians, because they rejected the Trinity. And Harvard and Yale were Unitarian institutions, were they not? And Emerson, you said, was Unitarian.
Yes, so that was too restrictive for him. But yes, so in the sense that if you're talking about Unitarians in Boston, you're absolutely right. Kevin Barrett, my friend Kevin Barrett, we were in Tehran together, and he told me the story of how he was raised a Unitarian, and then he never understood the Trinity. He didn't like the idea, and then finally became a Muslim. And so I said to him, well, all you did was add camels to your Unitarianism. And everybody thought that was funny in Tehran. But if you're talking about Islam, until now, there has been virtually no presence, virtually no presence, certainly no influence. If you're talking about
the White House Quran belonged to Thomas Jefferson, a founding father, and we know he read it before negotiating with the Barbary pirates. And also, the First Amendment is supported by Chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran, that says there is no compulsion in belief. Truth stands clear from error.
Yes. Okay. No influence. Virtually no influence. I'm telling you what the influential texts were. If you want an influential text, it was Protestant, and it was Paradise Lost. Everyone, as I said, everyone read, all of the founding fathers read Paradise Lost either directly. Thomas Jefferson did it directly. Ben Franklin did it directly. John Adams was reading it directly, or indirectly through Tom Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense. Everyone was influenced by it, and it basically won out over the Tories who wanted to stay connected with England. It won out. It carried the day. So that's a significant text.
But the Jewish conception of Satan is basically that he works for God, that Satan takes orders from God because his role is to tempt people into sin after they've been told the rule. So God basically says, here are my rules, but you will be tempted and you will be tested as Job was. So I guess Satan does have a role in being God's agent provocateur and
He certainly, yeah.
prosecuting counsel.
Jesus Christ said to the Jews, "Your father is Satan." So Jews have an intimate connection with Satan. I agree with that. Okay, but that doesn't mean I have to understand. I have to follow the Jewish interpretation of Satan. I don't have to follow the Jewish interpretation of anything. I think my interpretation of Jewish identity is much more accurate than anything they come up with. Okay, because I get to the heart of the matter, which is rejection of Logos. Logos is God. So they not only rejected God, they killed God. And so that's why they're satanic. That's why Jesus said that. So we're back to Satan again.
Well, when you say logos, do you mean logic?
Well, it's much bigger than that. That's one thing. Take every word that ends on ology, and you have some type of indication of the breadth of this term. If you go to Liddell Scott's Greek-English dictionary, you can see page after page of English words that are translations of the term logos. It is the central concept to Greek philosophy, and it also becomes the central concept of Christianity when St. John uses it at the beginning of his gospel. Logos, in the beginning there was Logos. Logos is with God. Logos is God. This is the basis of a discussion that I am having with Muslims right now. We're talking, is God rational? Is God?
I would say yes. And belief in God is also rational.
This is not clear. This is not a clear statement coming from Islam, because of the book of Al-Ghazali. The whole Islamic interface with Aristotle was not successful. Certainly not as successful as the European.
Aristotle was not. He was born well before Muhammad.
So yes, he was. You're right. He was many years before that, right? And they didn't know each other at all. Okay,
no.
But the interface with Christianity and Aristotle was much more effective. There was a struggle among the Muslims. One party was known as the Mutazilites, which accepted Aristotle or tried to work with him. And then you had the Asharites who completely rejected it. And the crucial figure was Al-Ghazali, who wrote a book called The Incoherence of the Philosophers, which basically said, close down the Islamic mind. We're going to have to reopen it again because we're now in the Muslims aren't off in the desert all by themselves anymore. And we're all part of a global conversation that is going to have some type of basis in Logos. We have to take that as the basis for humanity. The fact that we are rational creatures is the only thing that unites all of humanity. And that's precisely what has to be reinstated now. So you had an institution like the United Nations, the fundamental, I think, institution of the Third Republic, which says basically, do you know how the beginning of the United States?
That's not the French Third Republic. It's the American Third Republic, not the French Third Republic.
Right.
Just to be clear, on their Fifth Republic.
The American Third Republic began in 1945 with the victory of World War II, and one of the first institutions created after World War II was the United Nations. And it begins with the statement, "We the people of the United Nations." Well, that's a parody, or it's a copy of the Constitution of the United States, which says, "We the people of the United States in order to blah, blah, blah." Okay? And that's taken from the Mayflower Compact. So it's an American idea that got imposed on the world, and now we realize it's too superficial. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's over. It's over.
Well, it could be we, the Ummah, and then we'll all be agreed on who that God is and what his laws are. No, and then we'll all live together more peacefully.
There is no agreement within the Ummah unless you're going to exclude the Shia. So they don't agree. There is no agreement. I saw this firsthand when I was in Iran, when the Ayatollah Shahrud, I met with him in his apartment in Golestan. The first thing out of his mouth is an attack on the Saudis, saying that this is not real Islam. The supreme leader said something similar in a speech. So there's no unity among the Ummah.
Well, I would tend to agree because I think any Islamic scholar living in a kingdom would be compromised because the Gulf kingdoms are absolute monarchies, and it's well known that the king of Saudi Arabia is known to sign people's death warrants and have them assassinated and dismembered in the embassy. I'm thinking of Khashoggi. So people would be understandably afraid to antagonize their absolute monarch if they were Muslims living in the Gulf kingdoms. So it would be very easy to delegitimize all the Islamic opinions of those Islamic scholars living in kingdoms, and then the Shias living in the Republic of Iran would have greater sway in these matters. But it doesn't have to just stay with the Shias, because if America decides to adopt, what I hope they will, you will have the United States Supreme Court interpreting Quranic principles. And
Actually,
that would
one of the interesting things that came up in the discussion, I believe it was Khalid. Khalid invited me to a discussion about masculinity, and he said that are Muslims more masculine than Christians? Interesting topic, and I think I said yes, because they're more traditional. But that doesn't get to the heart of the matter. They come from traditional cultures where male-female role models are pretty much defined, and then you come to an America where they're trying to demolish or deconstruct all of those things. So obviously, it's going to have an effect in places like England. Okay, but the interesting thing was, let's go back to Adam and Eve, because I think that's the paradigm of male and female for both Islam and Christianity.
Well, they were both kicked out and blamed each other, so I don't know what.
There is a story of Adam and Eve in the Quran, but I think it's like most of the stories in the Quran that have references to earlier scripture in the Bible. It kind of has a garbled version of it. So the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible is very clear. It's very clear that Adam was created by God. That was the first man, and he needed a companion. And so God took the rib out of Adam's side and created Eve. And what he established was a hierarchical relationship there. So what's the common denominator here? It's Logos, okay? Logos is God. If you are rational, you're sharing in the being of God. And so Adam receives his rationality from God, and Eve receives her rationality or guidance from Adam. It's a hierarchical situation. So problems arise in the Garden of Eden when Eve decides to take a walk by herself. Okay, she leaves Adam. Adam said, "Now be careful, honey. Be careful when you're out there."
I don't remember that
Okay. And so she says, "Yes, I will. I'll be right back. I'm just going to take a little walk." And she goes, and suddenly she's there at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And there's a snake, and the snake's talking to her. And she says, "Gosh, I didn't know snakes knew how to talk. How did you learn how to talk?" And he said, "Well, I ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if you eat it, honey, you'll be a god." And so she falls for it. Now, she went back to Adam with the apple. And if Adam had not eaten of it, the fall would not have taken place. It would not have taken place. The fall happened when Adam ate the apple, not when Eve ate the apple. Now, the Quran has them both being tempted at the same time, which is not plausible. It's not psychologically plausible. It's like the classic. A
Could the
classic.
serpent have spoken to them at the same time?
No, absolutely not. No, there's no psychological depth to that understanding whatsoever. That's the problem with when you get a garbled version of the original text, which is what you got here with the Adam and Eve story in the Quran. The deep psychological truth here is that Adam or Eve needs the guidance of her husband. This is where the authority of the husband comes, because she is the weaker vessel when it comes to rationality. She needs that guidance, just as Adam needs the guidance of God to keep on his rationality. And it's all missing there. And that's a part of the discussion I think that we need to have here. The whole point of this is, so there are people out there who, big on submission now. It's a reaction to feminism. Women should obey their husbands. I think that women should obey their husbands. I agree with that. But what do you mean by that? What are you obeying? If you take this out of the context of logos, which is rationality, which is a set of limits on your behavior. Practical reason is morality. These are a set of limits on your behavior. It doesn't make any sense, and it's going to cause trouble. And that's precisely the problem with Islam. As Maimonides said, that Allah is an exalted caliph. That's the problem. And
I don't know how that problem.
So he continues by saying, when the caliph takes his evening ride, he gets to the gate of the palace grounds, and he doesn't know whether he's going to go left or right. And that's
blasphemy. How does anyone know the mind of Allah and him not knowing whether to go left or right?
Well, that's the whole point. You're saying that you cannot know the mind of God, and there are people who said this in England. Your friend William of Ockham, since you're an Englishman, you are de facto a nominalist and a follower of William of Ockham, even though you don't understand this. Ockham said that there are no universals in nature, which means that there are no universals in the mind of God, which means you can't say anything about the mind of God. And Aquinas said that's blasphemy. You can say something about the mind of God because St. John said Logos is God. You've already said something about God. Now, the Muslims look at that and they think, well, you're putting limits on God's power by saying he has to be rational. And
I'm sure they would agree that God is omniscient. Surely any Muslim would agree that God is omniscient.
Okay. Is Logos God?
Part of him. He's other things as well. He's logic and morality and,
Morality is Logos. Morality is...
You can be logical without being moral, can't you? I mean, I might think quite logically that if you have something of mine, I might like to steal it, and then it would be logical.
All morality is irrationality. Oh, did I say all immorality is irrationality?
Well, most people are irrational, knowingly or unknowingly. But if you asked a thief why they did it, I think it would be because I thought I'd get away with it. I mean, why does any criminal commit any crime? Because at the time of commission, they thought they were going to get away with it. Right. That's why they did it.
Right. That doesn't mean it's rational because you got away with it.
But we also know that some people do get away with murder.
What's a good thief, Claire? What's a good thief?
One who doesn't get caught.
Well, there you have it. Okay, so it's an equivocal notion of the word good here. So, but theft is
an effective thief.
Theft is by nature bad. Theft is by nature evil. All I'm trying to say here is that this we have to refine this discussion to the point where we understand at this moment of the decline of the empire that has ruled the world now, and it looks as if we're sailing on uncharted waters, and we have a captain now of the ship of state who doesn't believe in charts or stars. He's sailing according to his own mind. He's like Captain Ahab in Moby Dick. This is not reassuring.
Yes, and interestingly, the all-American novel Moby Dick has a protagonist called Ishmael,
Right.
who 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 who's a narrator.
Right. Yes. Call me Ishmael. Is that the beginning of the book?
Yes.
So what you have here is the outcome of Calvinism, which is nothing. The mind is its own place. Satan is the great theologian of Calvinism.
Well,
Milton is the great
Calvin.
theologian of Calvinism because he talks about this satanic divorce from Logos and the order of the universe. He's in rebellion against the order of the universe. What group is in
What
total
did Calvin
rebellion?
say or do? I'm afraid I'm not quite clear about what you mean about the evil thing that Calvin did. I'm sorry. Perhaps you'll explain.
It's called sola scriptura.
But
Why?
but
Why
what
is
word
what
to?
are you saying? What are you saying when you say I follow the Bible alone? You're saying you're following your own mind. That's what you're saying. You're saying it's my interpretation of the Bible, which is the guide to my life, which is totally subjective. Sola scriptura is a totally subjective imposition on the Bible. That's why the devil said the mind is its own place. That's why Emerson said nothing matters but the integrity of your own mind. That's why Donald Trump said when they asked him what he follows, he says, my mind.
Well, perhaps
That's where it comes
all
from.
Emerson meant was, that I, as a believer in God, do not have to feel guilty about not taking the Trinity seriously or being unable to
Right.
take it seriously. Wasn't that what Emerson meant? And he felt as a Unitarian that it just seems more logical than
This is
the
the inner
Trinity.
the inner Whig is coming out in you, Claire. You've been damaged by your education in England to accept satanic premises as if they're somehow normal. No, this is not normal. The hierarchy is normal. The rebellion against church authority is precisely what Whig history tries to justify, and we now know where it led. Where does it lead?
But really, Christianity, whether Catholic or Protestant, was about defending the divine right of kings. This was so in Orthodox Christianity. That was the whole point. All these monarchs looked to the Pope to say, "You're all right, King. Your subjects should listen to you because we think you're all right." And that was what the deal was until Henry said, "No, I don't need your approval. I know you don't have any armies to, invade me. Yes, you can get the Spanish to, launch their armada, but we don't think that they'll succeed." I think it was just a matter of time before these European monarchs realized that the Pope didn't have any power. But when they accepted the bargain of Christianity offered to them from Rome, they were barbarian kings. They couldn't read or write, but after a few generations of learning, Greek and Latin and learning their own history, they got a few of their own ideas, and that disagreed with the Pope. And so that's why I say the Protestant Reformation was inevitable.
So, what have we achieved by this discussion, Claire? Have we achieved anything?
I
Because you
think
just you
we're
just you
understand.
just you just came up with the fundamental expression of Whig history. So you're we I feel as if I failed in my job to liberate you from the chains of Whig history. I feel as if I failed.
Well, I don't really. Okay, I don't agree with this silly idea that liberty is, something an end in itself. Yes, it's nice, but if you go too far the other way, you'll find yourself living in the law of the jungle, where the strong eat the
What
weak,
is
and
what is
that's
the
not what we
boundary?
want.
What is the boundary? What is the boundary for liberty?
The law, and the law has to be
Logos,
fair
logos,
enough.
logos, logos.
So then
Liberty
we go
only
back to.
liberty only has meaning in terms of the context of who you are. And you are, by definition, a rational creature. So liberty can only be achieved within the bounds of rationality. It cannot be achieved by stepping outside of the bounds of rationality, because that becomes slavery. And that's precisely the thesis of my book, Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control. So if you're going to talk about liberty, you have to talk about logos. If you're talking about liberty without logos, you're a Satanist, and worse, you're an English Whig. So someone who was this famous guy who said that Aquinas was the first Whig? And someone said, no, that honor goes to the devil. The devil was the first Whig. I think that's true. The devil is the first Whig. If you're going to talk about liberty outside of the context of logos, of God's creation, of your nature as a rational creature, you're a Satanist, whether you acknowledge it or not.
Well, I would define liberty as something we ought to enjoy after all the necessary laws are in place. And then we can go on to discuss which laws are necessary. And we will find that laws forbidding sexual immorality are necessary. And this is the role of religion.
You won't find this by discussing it. It's like as if you're going to discuss which side of the road you're going to drive on. No, it's not that. That logos preceded you. Logos is there eternally before you. Logos is God, and it's your job to conform your behavior to the logos, which is God. End of story. There's no other story.
So we need to find out which laws we have to obey. I'm all for driving on the right side of the road, Mike. I'm glad that there's a line in the middle of the road. So, if there's an accident, we will know if we were on the right side of the road or not.
This is the fundamental fallacy when you base your entire country on the premise that we, the people, can determine some type of reality here. Anyway, I did my best, Claire. I did my best. I think I failed, but I did my best.
Well, I think I tried quite hard too. But you did talk about masculinity, and if I may, I would just like to define it in a sentence, and I would like to define masculinity as a state of mind prepared to defend patriarchal moral values. And that, I would suggest, is the institution of marriage.
Yes, I agree. I'm pro-marriage. I've been married for 56 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so rare. There's so many people who aren't married or don't have married parents. And
that's right.
And I think it is part of their neurosis and anger and bitterness. And
I agree.
And yes. Well, when will your autobiography be published?
Good question. It's finished, but I have to edit it down and format it and so on and so forth. I'm hoping it will come out in the spring.
Right. Am I mentioned?
For $10,000, I will mention you. For $20,000, I will keep you out of the book. So the choice is yours.
Well, I look forward to reading it. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
So